Welcome, folks, to the Land Tamer stream. It is one day to go. One day to go until the CCIE, Routing and Switching Written Exam. Tomorrow at 1:30, my date with Destiny. So that's what we're going to talk about today, the strategy one day out. It's literally, well, not literally, it's about 25 hours out, right? So about a day out. What is our strategy? What are we working on? And then we're going to go over a couple of technologies that I have been studying a little more in depth over the last 24 hours since the last stream. So let's talk about those things, folks. This, by the way, wallpaper of the day, this is from, I think it was around 1:15 or so a.m. launch of the Falcon 9 Block 5 rocket. They had a successful launch, and this stage 1 landed on, of course, I Still Love You drone ship. Great shot here. This course is from LC40, which is here in Central Florida, not too far away. So good stuff. They actually set a record of the largest commercial satellite launched, 7.8 tons, the heaviest ever, which is really cool, and that's courtesy of SpaceX.com. So we're doing our own launch control here, our own countdown. We've been doing it for about 6 weeks, counting down to this last day. So what does one do at their last day prior to taking the written exam? Well, as mentors already mentioned here in the chat before even the stream started, you got to be calm, and you got to be, of course, prepared for battle. I've been doing that, for a good couple of weeks now in that mindset, and we're still in that mindset, still in attack mode, but at the same time, nerves have to be calm, you have to be focused, well rested, well slept. Last night or yesterday, I studied just so focused for a long period of time yesterday, but I did take a break, which I promised myself I would do. I wrangled it in my mind for quite a bit. Like, I thought last night or yesterday afternoon, like, man, I'm so into what I'm studying right now. Should I just keep going, or do I afford myself a little bit of a break? And I did. So, man, I warred with that up to the last minute, and then we decided we actually went to sort of a dress-up party for like we're on a cruise. So we had a blast. I mean, tequila shots were had. There was some live mariachi music, good food, and drink, and it was great. And we got back, we left at a reasonable time, got back in a reasonable time, went right to sleep, got right up this morning and started studying again. But it was much needed. I was telling people last night, family members, that this is the first break, this first really that I've been out at all since, can't remember when, because I didn't really go out before the last exam. And I had not really gone anywhere since failing that exam, Cisco Live, until now. So it was good because it really refreshed me for today and tomorrow, which is great. Tequila, yes. It was some cheap tequila, but it was tequila nevertheless. And it's funny, we did the thing where we had some men and women, and some people take a slice of lime and put salt on their. I don't do any of that stuff, man. I just take it straight. But anyway, that's what we did. So now we're getting ready for last day of prep, and the first thing I did this morning is sit down and just review my schedule for tomorrow. And for tomorrow, again, I always work backwards. So I need to leave by 11. In the morning, I plan to just get up my normal time, actually a little later. So I'll probably get up, alarm or not, around 6 a.m. Just breakfast, a little TV, and then I'll have some time for maybe a couple hours of drills before heading out to the coffee shop. And the coffee shop, again, is going to be located nearby, very close to the testing center. So it gives me plenty of time to get in the vicinity, get there, and get that account. Worst case worst, I was telling my wife yesterday, hey, worst case worst scenario, I go out there and can't crank the motor, heck, it doesn't matter. I just call an Uber. I have built in time to get there and not have a problem. So anyway, that's the plan. So I'll have some memory drills in the morning, and that's going to be strictly memory drills, whether it's drill sheet or the official cert guide memory tables or flashcards. But that means that I need to go to bed at a good time tonight. I'll probably cut off study. I'll probably continue study throughout the day, and I have been like since 7 a.m. I've been just going solid. But I'll probably cut off around 8 and just relax my mind. Maybe watch a movie or something, or we might watch. I don't know if you all have HBO, but my wife and I have been watching the new HBO series, and it's freaking awesome, man. It's called Sharp Cuts or something like that. HBO Sharp Objects, yeah. And it is a great series. So, probably relax. That's the point. Relax and get to bed at a reasonable hour. Not change your routine that much. I won't be going to the gym at 5:30 a.m. tomorrow because that can introduce physical fatigue throughout the day, depending on what they're, torturing us with at the CrossFit gym in the morning. So that's my plan. So that means today, oh, by the way, I did go over the chart I did create a little chart here that I'll share on the question breakdown. So I just expounded upon this a little bit. Yesterday I discussed these areas that I'm going to focus on, last few days. VPN technologies, infrastructure security, and layer 2 technologies. But I went over the sort of question breakdown because I want to, when I go in tomorrow, here, let me go over the pre-exam routine for me, okay? It's different for the CCNP than it is the IE. But for the CCNP routing and switching, I would generally have, they give you one yellow sheet that you can fill out. It's basically a yellow, like cardboard page that's been laminated. And they give you one sheet you can write on front and back. So for the NP, I had all sorts of things prepared and memorized for both the switch and the route exams, where I went in and I had memorized all these things that I knew that were going to be really important. And before I even started the exam, I sat down and I write down everything, like that I had my little tables, right? And I would leave room for writing as well. I found with the IE written exam, I didn't use that thing at all. And I don't anticipate using it all, There's such a broad, diverse range of topics, and there's so much memorization you have to do. There's not any like one page set of things I think that would help me by just going in there and scrambling and writing them down to refer to later. I really don't. I mean, I did use the yellow sheet during the last IE exam because there were some questions, there was some subnetting, there was some questions related to knowing how to, subnet, of course, and summarize discontiguous networks, things like that. And then you also there was some hex conversion that I can't necessarily do in my head super fast right now, and I'll double check my work and write it on the sheet. Other than that, the sheet is pretty much useless to me. But I will set that aside, and then usually I'll adjust, I'll make sure that the mouse and the monitor and the chair, get comfortable. Then what I do is I actually read through the instructions each time. They give you time when you click OK and click the agreements. They give you time to just review the instructions. And one thing that I learned, and I'm going to double check this again tomorrow, but one thing I learned by reading the instructions last time is that you can get partial credit for some questions on the written, which surprised me, to be honest. And I had some discussions with Sho and some others, and that was a little shocking to some, and it was to me too when I first read it. I'm going to read that again tomorrow and make sure, but What that means is there are questions on the written that are multiple choice, and it'll say pick the best 3, for example, out of 5 or 6 or whatever the case may be. And what that means is it's really important to do your best. Don't just skip them and say, oh, I'm not going to get any credit at all. No, you might. So try to pick as many correct, choices as you can. The same, there's a lot of drag and drops typically in an IE written exam. So you have, maybe a list of labels on the left and you have some boxes on the right. You have to drag the labels into the boxes. Do the best you can. You might get partial credit. I don't know for that particular question that you do or not. I don't have a lot of faith in that. Even what I read, I was still very skeptical. But at the same time, do your best. So I'm going to read all the instructions. And then typically what I do before I start is I will put some time markers on the yellow sheet. I do use the yellow sheet for that. And last time I was caught a little off guard because I did not have that figured out in advance. I thought there were 110 questions, and it was 140 minutes. But I checked today, and I did a search and just clarified that, based on the blueprint, the duration is 120 minutes. They tell you 140 seconds on Pearson VUE with a little asterisk that says that could include, there is afterwards you can do a fill out a survey. There's a time to read the instructions. So 120 plus. But really, the timer you need to be focused on is 120 minutes, so 2 hours. So what I did is it also says between 90 and 110 questions. I don't know why, but when I went in the first time, I think I was thinking 100, that was set in stone. And in my first exam, I believe there were 90 questions. But I did this quick, thing to break down whether it says between 90 and 110. So I figured I'll probably go with this calculation, and I'll probably sit down and say, okay, in 30 minutes, I need to have 25 questions done. In an hour, I need to have 50 done. And in 90 minutes, 75, etc., so that by the end, I'm pretty close to 100. Anyone who's taken a Cisco exam multiple times knows how important time management is, right? So this has kind of been my standard all along. With the T-shoot is a little different because you have a certain number of tickets, etc. But I always try to come up with a system for keeping a pace. Because if you get too far behind, you have to scramble. One, that affects your mental game. It affects your concentration. And it can be distracting, right? Because I have been in a situation before where I got behind, even using this system. I think it was the route exam. And I realized, man, I'm in trouble, So I had to hurry, and I had to continually look up at the clock. And that's not good. If you get done early, that's great. You know that you'll have a little more time to take towards the end of the exam. But this is going to be probably what I go with tomorrow, and I write down on the yellow sheet when I get there. Basically a little over a minute for every question, which you can kind of go by. All right, so that's that topic. We got some good comments here. Acronyms have worked for me. And a little storyline for topics that I know I struggle. Some people use the house layout analogy, such as your house and each room are topics and groups. That's a good idea. I've heard that too. I know that Neckercube used and he provided it to the community for free, but he did a mind map, which I know that also, who else used the mind map? A recent blogger, Tim, used the mind map as well, which I found helpful too. I use mind maps for other things, not just certifications, but I use it when I'm working on complex topics or new topics at my job or somewhere else where I just need to sort of write and visualize and help visualize. So, but I've heard of that one too. That's a great one, especially for memorization. Mentor says, I'll share a link for the analogy I found. Very helpful for myself. Thank you, mentors. Appreciate that, man. Strategy is good. You got to have a strategy. So that's my pacing chart for tomorrow. So the question is, how about today? 24 hours ago, before I sit down for it, what is the strategy, right? Well, first of all, you're not going to learn a lot of new stuff the day before. So I'm not doing many deep dives. This is just preparing the mind for what not just I, but others have called the CCI routing switching written a trivia exam, okay? So that's really the focus today is, using some of these techniques and drilling the memory, because that's what's going to be key tomorrow is recalling things that I've already learned. And again, I'm not going to really deep dive into anything today. I'm going to try to resist a temptation to anyway and just focus on memorization, which includes, and by the way, I put sprint there because that's what Tim said in his blog. It is a sprint. The CCIE exams are sprints, not marathons, right? So, although it feels like a marathon for me, but yeah, you got to sprint, get to the finish line, and do what you got to do to get there. So I'm going to be reviewing the drill sheet. That is where I am now. I've already started that. I'm well into that already. Also going to review the IPv6 tunneling sheet, which is too big for the drill sheet. And specifically, once I finish going the drill sheet, the first sweep, I'm going to go back through these three areas that I'm weak on: VPN technologies, infrastructure security, and layer 2 technologies. And I'm just going to hit those areas specifically in the NecroCube flashcards, the cert guide memory tables, which I can get to today. Safari Books Online is up today, thank goodness. And networklessons.com as needed. I already consulted that once today, and it's already proven useful, my $1. So that's really good. But yeah, like the NecroCube flashcard set, for example, I'm going to go through here, and I'm just going to browse. I'm not going to use it like a normal flashcard, and then I'm going to go through the layer 2 technologies, right? Just kind of look at the top, see, do I know that answer? There's another way probably to use this. Yeah, but anyway, that's what I'm going to go through to just jog memorization in those areas. And that's it. So wish me the best. My attitude is in check. I think this time, last time one, I was fatigued going into the exam. I really was. I agree. Layer 2 tech can be a make or break good plan. Yeah, and I did badly on that, mentors. And it surprised me when that happened, like I mentioned yesterday, because I did so well on the switch exam. But layer 2 at CCIE level is so much more, right? Especially talking about IGMP and things like that. So, yeah. I'm just going to focus on these weak areas, right, for my last day memory jogging activities. But yeah, my mindset is much better this time. I am, I guess, very hopeful last time, partly just due to wishful thinking, I guess, that I was ready and that I wanted a break really bad. And I was just really wanted to pass so that I could get to that break. And of course, it didn't happen. I relied too much on the Boson tool, probably not the way that the makers of the Boson software intended, right? I was getting answers right using that tool, but not always for the right reason. And so I feel much better about that this time. I really do. But I've already got the mindset that if I walk out of there tomorrow and I have not passed, I'm going to use the same methodology, rinse and repeat. And I'm going to schedule it for August 29th, I think. Because on the 30th is when the new Evolving Technologies Guide is incorporated into the exam. So that's my plan. I have a plan already, pass or fail. If I pass, I'm taking a little bit of a break. We're going to do some family stuff. Probably take a little vacation and get right back at it. Probably be a staycation and then plan a later real vacation But that's the plan. But again, my main focus is performance during the exam. So I am culling the emotions and the expectations, and none of that is important right now. Open Source Society, wishing you the best of luck, sir. Thank you very much, Open Source. Appreciate that. Really do. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and cover a few topics now. You feel it in your gut. Being nervous is great, and will keep you sharp. Either or, you got this, my man. Thank you, mentors. That's right, either or, and that's my mindset. Pass or fail tomorrow. This is a done deal. This is happening. You know, as many times as I gotta go, retake the exam. I'm gonna retake it until I pass it. It's just happening. So we're gonna win the war. But yeah, here's a couple topics I want to cover in brief that I did some review of either last night or this morning, and that is other spanning tree features. These were confusing to me. I've seen some error messages related to spanning tree, and it referenced these features, and I've looked at them before, but really not in depth. And one thing that kind of clicked it for me, I actually used the networklessons.com for this to sort of clarify some matters. And this is talking about spanning tree dispute and spanning tree bridge assurance. So one thing that kind of helped clarify this for me, I'm like, what the heck? I haven't read about these before, you know, on the Catalyst switch. But a lot of times I was using like the Catalyst 3700 guide, etc. But these are used on certain platforms, not all platforms. Think a lot about, you can think a lot about data center platforms. So Catalyst 6500 series, Nexus. That's where you're going to see these more advanced features. And one of them is spanning tree dispute. And what spanning tree dispute does is it will actually look, it's going to look at, because in RSTP and MST, additional portions of a BPDU, some of the values are encoded in there to indicate port type, port role, etc. So that bridges can communicate with each other about RSTP characteristics. And the spanning tree dispute is a feature that is on, typically, that is going to look at those and determine if there's some sort of role mismatch. So let's say, for example, I've got a port that is spanning tree type, port fast type edge on a Catalyst switch, and I'm running RSTP. And on the other end, I detect a root port. So, and knowing that I have another port that is already a root port, I don't know, that might be a bad example. I think I have one here. But basically, it's going to look at those roles and the port types. If there's a mismatch, it can block the port. In the drill sheet, excuse me, I actually have a section of errors that you might see that need some interpretation. And so this is STP2 dispute detected. And in this case, it's comparing like the port states, for example, the port roles. If there's any sort of mismatch, this feature has the ability to block the port to prevent problems with spanning tree, right? So that's what spanning tree dispute, and then you have spanning tree bridge assurance. Again, both of these features are only used with RSTP and MST, and only on certain platforms. So bridge assurance is an interesting feature, and it threw me off at first, because the idea of bridge assurance is that we're going to look on each port that is part of the spanning tree, and the topology. We're going to have the switch generate BPDUs on all these ports. And bridge assurance makes that assumption and configures that, and also monitors those BPDUs. So it's kind of like, when we think about loop prevention and loop consistency and the feature loop guard for spanning tree. This does loop guard protection because you're looking for BPDUs, and if you stop receiving BPDUs, a unidirectional link could be the problem. There could be another problem. There could be a problem with the software. There could be any number of problems, but even on blocking ports, spanning tree bridge assurance is telling that switch to forward BPDUs anyway, right? And it still knows it's a blocking port, but the assurance is an extra level of protection of the spanning tree topology. And if there's an issue, you're going to get this message here. Block or unblock, I believe. STP2 bridge assurance feature configured. BPDs are no longer being received. A couple other of these are PVST peer. That's kind of what we talked about yesterday, the different PVST versions that Cisco has, due to the fact that you might be using ISL or .1Q trunks. Well, on some of those platforms, you might get an error if there's a detection of PVST incompatibility. Like you might have ISL on one switch, and you're running PVST, and on this switch, you're using .1Q. The message types are going to be wrong, and so it will block the port, which is a good thing, right? It's a good feature. And then PVID local. This is when you have inconsistent native VLANs on trunks, for example. So you're going to get message to indicate that, which it's important to know those messages, how to distinguish them. All right, one other topic, and this is good. I still had to review it because I attended a session, Cisco Live, an intermediary session, not an advanced, on MPLS and VRFs, just to cover this feature, vrf-lite, and I think I've got it now. I created on the drill sheet. I've added a number of things yesterday to the drill sheet and this morning, just to kind of make sure I cover them. And the ones in red are the ones I'm focused on. Like I added YAML, JSON, XML. MPLS labels was already there. Yeah, we talked about MOS yesterday. One thing that's important is to know how is that how is that checked using SLA. That is a UDP jitter, is what can detect that. Where is, stackwise switch election, NAT64, OTV interfaces, REST API HTTP methods. I elaborated on that today a little bit. Why you do MSD PSA filtering. I'd gone over that, but I had not necessarily added it here, but it's here now in the drill sheet. Let's just do a search. Okay, here we go. I don't really have this in red. I probably should have this in red, though. We're going to put it in red. We're going to trigger the bull, man. Bull sees red, goes after it, right? This is interesting. I did a little bit of reading. I've got a link below. Oh, actually, that's the next topic. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead. vrf-lite. Here we go. So, all in all, the difference is it's not hard to understand or complicated, and I'm sure there are licensing implications like everything with Cisco. But there are also, use case implementations and design, why you would use either VRF or vrf-lite. And I've broken it down here. MPLS, essentially VRF is full VRF. You would typically use with MPLS, and vrf-lite you would use without. There is not support, I don't believe, at all, really, for vrf-lite with MPLS. And of course, these technologies are used for segmentation, right, or segregation. Typically with VRF, a service provider is going to use it, so it separates the customer routing, and they can use overlapping IP ranges, right? For vrf-lite, there are multiple cases you might use it, but typically it's used in the enterprise. It might be for your CE routers. It could be for within the enterprise itself. It could be in a data center where you're doing separate routing tables for different customers that maybe you're doing, tenant-based configurations. You have separate tenancies, and you need to use vrf-lite in the data center. Great use for vrf-lite. Route targets you don't use in VRF, and as it says below, you're not really sharing VRF information through your fabric or through your core. In vrf-lite, you are in VRF, you're not in vrf-lite. You don't use route targets, and vrf-lite configurations, the VRFs, that is locally significant information only. All right, which changes the scale, because if you want to connect groups of customers through a data center, for example, across multiple devices, well, you've got to go in and do a lot of manual configuration of the vrf-lite, and make sure that everything is matching up, and that configuration is locally significant only, right? So it's not as scalable, for sure, as VRF. That's why it's called vrf-lite, right? But there are some other subtleties to vrf-lite, and that's where I think I was tripping up a little bit. One is the fact that when you're doing PE to CE routing, vrf-lite is not supported with ISIS or IGRP, but who cares, right? But ISIS is not supported with vrf-lite. The other protocols are. In general, Cisco recommends you use BGP, but you can use other protocols. And as a matter of fact, with ospf, there is a subtlety here, because in order to prevent, a lot of times when you're doing PE to CE routing, loop prevention is an important issue. With some protocols, you can use site of origin. With ospf, there's a special bit, the down bit, that is used to indicate whether the ospf LSA has been redistributed into a protocol like BGP, right? With vrf-lite, it's going to essentially ignore the down bit. It's not going to, when you configure vrf-lite, you can do PE/CE ospf into BGP, for example. But when you're using vrf-lite, by default, it's going to ignore the down bit and do calculations based on whether that down bit is set or not. You can enable that feature, though, but you have to use a special command, capability vrf-lite, to turn on observation and calculations based on the down bit. So, as always, with redistribution, you have to be aware of loop prevention mechanisms. So those are some subtleties of vrf-lite that is important to remember. And then the last thing is, we had a little trivia question yesterday, lldp-med. And what are the differences with lldp? Well, let's go over that. I don't know if you got it or you remember it off the top of your head. I know, pick me. Mentors, you're up. Tell the class, what's the difference between lldp and lldp-med? So as we know, the abbreviation lldp is for Link Layer Discovery Protocol, and we're going to talk about CDP in a minute. CDP has been around quite a while. LLDP came out, and Cisco actually collaborated on that standard. LLDP is standard, but LLDP has some deficiencies. And for that reason, lldp-med, which is, actually, we're going to go to, I put a link down here, which is really good. And it's by Cisco, and it does a comparison, and it's sort of in its own defense, of CDP versus LLDP and lldp-med. But as you can see here, it talks a little bit about the history, how LLDP was developed by EEE community and standardized. And then it mentions how this is an extension for media endpoint devices. And you want to think voice here. So this became an extension, and it's interesting because lldp-med, media endpoint devices, and Mentor says enhanced media endpoint discovery. Examples: enhanced plug and play, PoE, and VoIP 911 services. You got it, man. Ding, 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 ding. Mentors wins. You really want to think about LDP-med, in particular for voice, because when you think about voice deployments, it's very important with voice. There's so much more you need to do on a switch than provide just the VLAN. You need to provide a voice VLAN. You need to communicate with a phone in terms of potentially what protocols is it, what compression is it using. So you need to know what kind of device is there. You need to configure QoS. And especially when you talk about power, these types of protocols are important because once you start plugging in, I hate VOP, it's not my favorite either, mentors. Once you start plugging in wireless access points, once you start plugging in video phones, once you start connecting, video phones consume a lot of power. The switch is not always going to have, it doesn't have unlimited power, to quote Star Wars Episode 3, right? And the Emperor. You've got to allocate your power based on what kind of devices you have. So that sort of communication is important. PoE microwave nodes. Heck, dang, I hadn't thought about that. But yeah, I'll bet those things can consume some power. So it's very important. And just imagine you're deploying a voice-wide solution and you're a telco provider or you are a large enterprise and you've got to deal with multiple vendors of equipment. Maybe you're doing a transition. Maybe you don't have Cisco at all, or you're transitioning from, one vendor to another. That's a lot to process, and that's very careful design that's required for that to go smoothly. I've seen some 60 watt per port nodes. Oh my gosh. Yeah, so that's where that's important. But that's where lldp-med came in. But guess what? It's not an IEEE standard. Guess who developed this standard? Telco group, right? Industry challenges in implementing lldp-med. What is the name of? This is the same group that develops the wiring standards. lldp-med IETF working group. Oh yeah, Telecommunications Industry Association. Yeah, I seem to remember having to memorize that for one of the CCNP exams. I don't remember which one. Oh, I remember now. Wasn't it the T-shoot? I seem to have to remember memorizing one of their standards, the TIA standards from the T-shoot. Yeah. T-shoot. I was trying to remember this earlier and I could not. I think it's a troubleshooting standard. Anyway, don't want to go off into a... yeah, because, when you're studying T-shoot and you're studying... you have to study different operational standards, right? Like PPD-IOO, and there's some other ones, other frameworks for troubleshooting issues. TIA has one of those. Well, they also came up with lldp-med. All right, so let's think about interoperability. If you have devices, switches on the network, okay, you can run CDP, you can run LLDP, you can run CDP and LLDP simultaneously, right? You can run CDP and lldp-med simultaneously. You cannot run, at least on a Cisco device, you cannot run lldp and lldp-med simultaneously, which floored me to learn that today. But basically, a Cisco switch, at least the platform I was reading about, if you do lldp run and you're running lldp, the first lldp-med TLV you receive on a switch port it's gonna switch to lldp-med mode. Now, why is that important? Because med is an extension, and med does not include all the features that lldp includes. In particular, lldp is intended for network devices to communicate with other network devices, and lldp is for network devices to communicate with endpoint devices. So I think it seems to me anyway, initially, that if lldp-med is used on the network, you might lose some features with lldp, so you might have to run CDP. I don't know, I made a chart for it here. First of all, if you look at, I don't have a big chart for this, but in the boson, you have, for example, an lldp and lldp-med drag labels, and it wants you to drag the features that are associated with lldp, and those are associated with lldp-med. I just copied one of these. I'm like, well, I just memorize one side of it. But essentially, all you get with lldp: system name, description, capabilities, port description, management address. It's pretty simple. And you could see that being important when you're talking network device to network device. CDP doesn't make the distinction, right? CDP includes the capability of network and endpoint devices all talking to each other, right? But lldp, it's different. This is network to network. If you want endpoints, use the lldp-med. And notice the differences, though. This is why you might want to run both. Obviously, when you have different standards bodies, you end up with these poor, non-overlapping features, and sometimes have to run both, right? You might have to do this, especially in a mixed or heterogeneous network. So CDP, you can do and lldp-med, you can do the duplex of the port. And CDP, in its defense, and in their article, it says, look, true, we don't include the port speed in CDP, but you really don't need it because the main purpose of CDP is establish sort of, for example, negotiate the port. If there's issues with that, the main thing you need to know is duplex, because duplex is what might cause an issue where the port negotiates, but there's a duplex mismatch, and you're going to have problems or looping, etc. So they're saying really the speed is not important for troubleshooting. And in actuality, in a lot of cases, the speed, if they don't match, if they're hard-coded and they don't match, the ports may not come up anyway, and CDP is not going to, you're not going to see CDP packets. So I understand that. I don't know. It's not just about troubleshooting. It's about information gathering too, right? So with CDP, you can see MTU size. You cannot on lldp-med, but you can't see port speed. Obviously, CDP, you can see native Vlan information. Remember, VST, am I saying the right? So many acronyms. Let's see, Sky asks, wouldn't that show late collisions with a duplex mismatch? Yes. So you're going to get, you're going to have collision problems, and you're going to want to know if there's a duplex mismatch for sure. And both protocols will, whether using LLDP or CDP, they are going to help you. Duplex, not just collisions. There's another big problem with duplex mismatch, and that is spanning tree loops. And that is a real common cause for spanning tree convergence problems on switches. And when that happens, you'll see switch outages because the processor just can't handle that sort of flapping with your STP state and loops. Loops becomes a problem quickly and exponentially when you've got a duplex mismatch. So yeah, very important information. But the speed, I might want to know. I'm doing inventory. I want to query my switches. LLDP is going to give you that information, right? So we know about native VLAN PVST, that I was thinking of, because we just talked about PVST yesterday and how PVST plus on a Cisco switch is aware and compatible with the other end being either PVST, PVST plus, or 802.1d spanning tree versions and BPDU types, and it's able to detect and send both types of BPDU messages as required. So obviously to do that, the Cisco switch is aware of the native VLAN, and it's going to be able to tell you that in the CDP protocol as well. Big downside of CDP, no third-party devices. How many of you have ever configured LLDP? It's a lot different, isn't it? Like when you're used to CDP, I mean, it's not hard. The one big distinction to me, not to go too in depth with it, but with CDP, like you don't have to go in. You pretty much, typically it's on anyway on a lot of device types, or you turn it on and you're comfortable with information you're going to get. You know what information you're going to get. You know how to interoperate. You can even route over it using ODR, which you never would want to, that I can think of. But you know, you're used to it. With LLDP, you do LLDP enable or LLDP run, depending on your device. And that's great, but there's other configurations you need to do. You actually sort of, CDP has some default built-in information that you're going to get just by turning it on. With LLDP, you have to turn the protocol on, and then you've got to turn on other features that you want to use, other information types that you want to get, right? They're your TLVs. So there's a little more to it, but you do have third-party support. With LLDP also, you get TCN information, topology change notifications. That could be very useful when you're troubleshooting some very difficult sort of spanning tree issue. Besides debugs and things like that, or packet captures, just being able to get TCNs through LLDP could be useful. And in CDP, of course, you got VTP information, management information in there, which can be really useful if you're using VTP in your environment. Okay, we got some other finer points here as well, which I learned today. Mentors can be I have in a large VoIP environment. One experience I've noticed that you run CDP and LLDP together, many non-Cisco phones have constant complications with running both. Really? That's interesting. I noticed in reading in this document from Cisco, they say that they have actually licensed CDP to other vendors. So, of course, many of you have probably seen it. I think I tried to list out some the other day where I've seen CDP run on Cisco ShoreTel. Anybody use ShoreTel VoIP? They support CDP. Avaya, I think, licensed CDP as well and used it. Those are big. Avaya's big. But it's interesting to note here about, I have seen issues, Sky, where, especially with a voice where you are relying on, I think I know what you're talking about, Sky. So I remember an issue with Avaya and CDP and voice and data VLAN detection. So what would happen is you would tell, you could assume by looking at the switch that CDP is running, and you connect an Avaya voice over IP PoE phone. And I actually saw issues detecting the voice VLAN. Like, it's configured voice VLAN number 10, VLAN, switchport access, voice VLAN 10, switchport access VLAN 20. And what would happen is the device would actually, the way it worked is it would obtain a DHCP address first on the data VLAN. And then it would attempt to obtain from that data VLAN what the TFTP server name was. Then it would go to the TFTP server, download its configuration. And then from the TFTP server's configuration being dumped, from there it would detect what voice VLAN it was supposed to use. The actual voice VLAN command and the CDP message, it was not using it in that way. And that confused me for the longest time. Like, we had a lot of voice devices that were coming up and not working. And we figured that out. Oh, we need to put the DHCP option information for these Avaya devices. That option 82 information needs to go into the data VLAN options as well. Only that way will it obtain it, which is different from how it works on a Cisco device. So I don't know if that's the experience you're talking about, Sky, but I've definitely seen issues with interoperability with CDP. Just because you show CDP neighbor, don't assume it's a Cisco device, and don't assume it's going to work exactly the way you're accustomed to it working, right? I think that's a good point. Glad you brought it up, Sky. It can be a pain and not brain surgery in my experience. And again, it didn't work in a large VoIP environment as of now. Dell does. Okay, so Dell uses CDP. Interesting. Sky says one client ran a Mitel. Okay, I think I had a client use Mitel. I did a number of years ago. They used Mitel phone system on a Dell network. CDP is enabled. Default on Dell, and the engineer did lldp. Mitel controllers would put the phone in a passive, non-registered mode randomly, sometimes right in the middle of a phone call. Oh my gosh. Yeah, nightmare indeed. Sky says, try telling the Dell engineer CDP was causing conflicts. He told me we don't use CDP. So I showed him the multicast address for CDP on the voice VLAN, and he disabled it. And that fixed it, didn't it? So, Sky brings up a good point. Okay, so you can use CDP and lldp, right, at the same time on a Cisco switch. But there might be reasons you don't want to do that. So that's a great example, Sky. Appreciate that. And, okay, so Sky brings up something else that is very important to any network engineer with longevity, right? First of all, of course, you want to have support contracts on all your critical equipment. So you can call support, but always be prepared for support to tell you, prove it. That happens a lot. So before you make that call, first of all, when you put in a support call, give them as much information as you can, right? The problem error that you're having, the IP addresses of devices, make and model, and great if you can do a show tech support, or the equivalent on your device. On a non-Cisco, it could be something different. Like on an F5, they do what they call QK view dumps. So have that already, but be prepared for support to say, if you give them a theory, they're going to say, prove it, right? And preach it, land. That's right, man. Have your ducks in a row, right? So very important. And granted, there may be times where you struggle for a means to prove something due to the fact maybe it's a production network and you need to capture information on a physical interface, and there's no way you have access to that physical interface. It's not connected to a switch that you can do a span session on. It can be challenging at times, but sometimes it's very simple as doing embedded packet capture and just showing, sending a PCAP file. Look, hey, dude, I told you, CDP is causing a problem. Look at the Ethernet address, multicast address being used here. That's CDP. And look what's in the CDP message, right? So great job, Scott. That's why I love the chat, guys, and I appreciate you guys hanging out. That's why I love streaming, is we get these great stories to correlate the information to the real world, But that's all I got, folks. I don't have any other. Did I go over all these? Oh, a couple more. So again, as I mentioned, CDP supports network to endpoint and network to network devices. lldp-med does not support network to network. It is for network to endpoint, hence the name MED. It is an extension, and on a Cisco switch, I'm not sure about others, if it detects that lldp-med is running, it is no longer going to process LLDP packets. CDP is 60 seconds, LLDP-med is 30. Non-Cisco discovery, of course, we talked about that. And as I mentioned, runs simultaneously with LLDP. CDP does not. LLDP-med does not. So hope that helps, folks. And I think that's going to wrap it up for us. I don't have any trivia for tomorrow. I'm not really focused on that right now. Again, I'm focused on the time I have remaining, which is now about 24 and a half hours. So wish me the best, guys. Send me some good bits. I know you will. Again, either way, I'm going to give you an update, probably via Twitter first. And, oh, one thing I wanted to mention that I'm going to do different this time. And I'm going to put this in my strategy, too. Besides the pacing chart, post-exam strategy. My post-exam strategy is I'm going to be better prepared. I did not have a good post-exam strategy last time, so what I did was, leaving the exam, I was at Cisco Live, so granted, circumstances were a little different, right? And I walked, it took me a while, right, to find somewhere good to sit down and start taking notes. That's what you want to do. You want to say, okay, it's fresh in my mind. Dang, this hit me out of nowhere. I need to look that up and get ready for the next exam, right? So my post-exam strategy, and this is pass or fail, right? Because even if I pass, I want to take good notes. I want to know, what did I miss? Why did I miss it? And I want to, at least go back and, because some of it might be on the lab exam. It might be in the diag. It might be in the T-shoot. Troubleshooting. So my post-exam strategy is this time I'm going to have paper ready, because last time, Cisco Live, I didn't have any paper or anything. All I had was my phone. I didn't have a laptop. So I banged this out using Apple Notes app on my phone, and I did the best I could. But tomorrow, even though I'm riding my motorcycle, afterwards, I'm going to go back to that coffee shop, and which is going to be close by. And I'm going to just frantically write on pen and paper everything, pass or fail, right? So I'm adding that, and I don't want to forget about that note taking immediately afterwards. So yeah, I got a couple links. Meat Chunks. I found this today. I watched part of the delayed webcast this morning from the launch. If I can't catch them live, I'm going to watch them on YouTube, which I did. And then I thought, this is great music, man, for study music. So someone actually made a playlist of all the SpaceX webcast music, and I'm sharing that because if you want to use that for studying, great, and nerd out or whatever. Also, Jack, our mentors in the chat, posted some really good links from 2008. This is a CCIE student who posted about the difference between STP and RSTP, PBST, the different PBSTV versions, and it's beautiful. I actually looked it over this morning. Thank you for that, mentors. This summed it up much better than I could have yesterday. So definitely check these out if you're preparing for the written or want to understand those better. And this is a good read too. I'm not saying you need to read all of it, but whoever wrote this put some effort into this article about CDP and lldp-med, sort of some of the history and background and why it's important, what the differences are, and it's really cool. I liked it, so I want to share that with you folks too. And I'm going to put those here. And thanks for all the good mentions in the chat, folks. All the good lucks and the good bits and everything. I'm probably going to go dark. So I may get on Discord once or twice, but we're probably going to go dark until 1:30 tomorrow. So I'll let you know how it goes. And again, either way, this is a war, not just a single engagement. So, we're going to be here. We're going to be here every day. It'll either be studying for written or labbing some more. whichever way that goes, I look forward to, collaborating with you folks here in the chat. I wish you luck in your preparations. Hopefully today, maybe you've got a little time carved out. You're doing some labbing, you're doing some studying, you're doing some practice. Good luck on it. Sending you good bits. Hoorah! Simplify, do or die, devil dog. I love it, mentors. Appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot, guys. And by the way, appreciate all the support of the channel. We hit 400 subs and immediately jumped to like 410 on YouTube, so you could sub to us on YouTube. If you're an Amazon Prime member, you get one free Twitch Prime subscription a month that you have to renew each month, so feel free to hit that sub button if you like to support the channel in that way, or give us a follow on Twitter, here, Instagram. Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate all the encouragement. And in 24 hours, a little over 24, I'll let you know how it goes. Thank you, Sky. Appreciate it. Appreciate all the support, guys. And good luck to you, too, on your studies. And we shall see you back here tomorrow on the Land Tamer stream. Thank you, my forces. Appreciate it, man. Appreciate all the check-ins, guys. Is anyone streaming that I need to host? Do y'all know? Let me check real quick, see who we can host. Because normally Dimitri would be streaming by now. Because like my channel, like if no one is online, it's automatically going to host Bob Ross. Ah, shucks, no one is live right now. That's okay though. So when I drop off, it looks like Dimitri, I think I saw him on Twitter say that he had a different schedule. Anyway, we'll be hosting Bob Ross, so you can thank good Bob. You can channel Bob Ross for your studies. Thanks, guys. Have a great Sunday afternoon. Rest your weekend, and we shall see you back here tomorrow on the Land Tamer stream.